So we're the insurer, so we'll try and, now Chris's schedule, try and give you some sort of idea of what's out there to actually protect you. And I know we'll just have a few IT preparations. I think the important thing for me is the education piece that Chris just talked about. It is absolutely vital to get those procedures and get the awareness in place. I can tell you I work on a team with very, very good cyber underwriters. That's what they do, day in, day out. One of my guys got caught by a phishing email. We actually do this centrally. We have a large American parent. So we employ a third-party company to test all our staff. Don't worry, they don't get sacked at the end of it or anything like that. But just to see if they'll open these attachments, these emails. And one of our underwriters got an email through on a Friday afternoon, all looked legitimate. It said order. So he got all excited that he won a bit of business on a Friday afternoon. And he opened it. Well, there was no harm done because it was a test email, if you like. But for me, it just goes to prove it doesn't really matter what industry you're in, how well we all sit in a room and think, oh yeah, I'd realise this, I'd spot a fake email. Actually, it happens. When we all become busy and overrun with work, we don't think about the simple things. And the other part for me is the ransomware. Really interesting to see how that's now developing. Ransomware, when it first started, actually these criminal elements had sort of a code of honour almost. They were giving you your data back. But we're now seeing ransomware pre-scan your data. So what happens is it'll check through your data, it will say, okay, I've got Matt's holiday photos and bank account. It's not worth a massive amount to them. So they'll charge me £300. But if they scan it and find out they've got company details or something a little bit more spicy in there, they'll demand more. We're a hospital in the US that closed for a week off the back of a ransomware attack because it started with one machine and then went through various different departments. £24 million, or dollars, sorry, they asked for on that one. And it shut the hospital for a week. So it just goes to show how these things are constantly developing. So how are we exposed? Well, I guess if I just sort of start by talking about the sort of cyber insurance side, we're all used to buying insurance covering the fire, theft, and all the other glamorous bits. This insurance covers the other bits, the bits we don't see. So a hacker, a virus, a denial of service attack, even operator error, pressing the wrong button, opening the wrong email. So how are we exposed? Online sales, that's very obvious, we can all understand that. If we can't trade online and we're reliant, there could be an exposure there. If our internal network is down, can we still trade to the same levels? In reality, we still sit in front of a lot of IT directors that say it's fine. We've got the server in the corner, if that goes down, everyone goes home. Okay, well, they log into that server. Oh yeah, hadn't really thought about that. So actually, it's sometimes actually having that plan in place. Data centres. I think this is a really interesting one to see how the data centre sort of industry is developing. Because if you purchase services from a data centre, well, if you use Amazon, you know what you're getting. But there's a lot of other companies now that are white labelling and these flashy websites and names offering you cheap data storage. Do you know where your data's being held? I've started to see data centres crop up that are industrial units with one power supply, one communication line. That's not a data centre. That's not where you want your data held. It's not protected. So just do some due diligence around where your data actually ends up. We're still the biggest risk. You speak to your IT teams, they'll tell you they've got amazing systems in place, they'll spend a lot of time getting things right. What happens when we all get our grubby little mitts on it? It goes wrong, because someone will leave a yellow post-it note with their password on the screen, someone will open the wrong email, someone will find a shortcut around the system. So all that hard work that goes into it kind of goes wrong when we all touch it. Telephone networks, we're still seeing an awful lot of hacking incidents into networks. So this is when someone will attack a phone line and they'll divert it to a premium rate number. So what will happen is they'll tend to pick on offices, they'll do it overnight, and then the next night, and they release it in the morning, so you're not even aware your phone's being hacked. So we've got 3 or 4 on the go at the moment, claims in. They're not massive claims. They're 20-odd thousand to 70-odd thousand. But that's a big number to take off the bottom line of your business. Are we the weakest link into somebody else's system? So start to think about who you interact with, who your network links into. Because we're finding more commonly, if you wanted to hack one of the bigger names, their systems are pretty secure, but other people feed into them. So who do you use? Do you use payroll companies? Do you use other outsourced service providers that your network connects to? Because chances are it'd be easier to get in via yourselves. Data protection really is, I mean, encryption we talk about, and I can't stress enough, please, please, please encrypt as much as possible. However, anyone work in a paperless office? I don't. We still hold a huge amount of paper. It's data. It can still get lost, no different from leaving a laptop in a pub, on a train or whatever else. You can leave a file that might have employee details in it. Might have specifications, plans, all sorts of confidential information. And business interruption losses. We talk about the data loss and this privacy aspect, which is really important. But if your network goes down and you can't operate, the actual cost to your business could be massive if you're unable to trade for a few days. And I've got some examples of where we've been involved in claims to give you a little bit more sort of context to some of these bits. An IT expertise and the size of the team. So think about your own organisations, your own IT setup. Does it really revolve around one person? It tends to. You have one senior IT guy. If they're incapacitated for any reason, can everyone else actually deal with the issue as effectively? 31% of cyber attacks actually come from within the organisation. That's that human element again. That's a massive number. So how are we responding? We will send the slides through, so I apologise if this is a little bit small. So the coverage, we talk about first party and third party. So first party, if you think about insuring a building, it's the fire and those sort of covers. Well, we can cover you for the loss or damage, rectifying the fault in the system, the resultant business interruption loss, cyber theft, so someone actually hacking into your bank accounts. Now, we talked a minute ago about these sort of impersonation frauds, sort of social engineering attacks. They're not picked up by these policies because that's a slightly different route in, okay? Cover is available on different policies, crime cover, and Ed, you may wish to touch on that at the end. But cover is available out there, so you can make sure you're picking up that element as well, because those claims are coming in left, right and centre. Cyber extortion, so those ransomware. Telephone hacking, which we talked about, and adulteration of stock. Adulteration of stock, really nice one. That came from actually when we were talking to a chocolate manufacturer on the continent. And they were saying they were really worried about this stock of chocolates they've got. All the finished product sits in this great big refrigerated unit. Well, it's not got an on-off switch and a temperature gauge anymore. It's all part of the network. The operations director can look at what's happening in there at any time when he's remote from the business. So, conceivably, it could be hacked, it could have a denial of service attack, anything could happen to it. And that was their biggest exposure. On the third party side, so this is actually your liability to other people. So this is that data element. So cyber media, the things we say and do in this sort of cyber world. Privacy liability and breach of confidentiality, that storing information, whether it's personal information or whether it's corporate information. So we hold lots of employee details, we might have individual customers, but what about plans, design, specification? Has anyone seen the Land Rover Evoque that got copied in China? Incredible. I'd encourage you to have a look at that after. We sometimes have some slides up. This vehicle is exactly the same. Exactly the same. Did they purchase one, strip it down bit by bit and rebuild it? No, of course they didn't. They got hold of the plans, the specifications. Cybersecurity liability, so that bit when someone uses your network to get into somebody else's. Breach of PCI DSS, so PCI payment cards. If you're using payment cards and you're authorised by the PCI can fine you So if you lose those credit card data, they can fine you for the costs of replacing all those card details. So we can put the cover in there for that. And regulatory actions and fines, so the ICO. So we cover fines. It's pretty rare that you get fines covered, but the ICO is actually relatively comfortable with us doing that. So we are picking up the £400,000 fines, the £150,000 fines. So that's how the cover works. The risk management side, we have third parties that get involved in security audits, penetration tests. I'd encourage you to have these. These are really important for you to actually understand how you're exposed. What are the weak points into your system? And on the breach response, so for us it's actually what happens in the event of an incident. You don't want to fill in a claims form, you don't want to wait for opening hours, you need something there and then. So we actually outsource, other insurers do similar things. So we use a company called RPC in their Resecure service. So 24/7 number, you phone them, they get an IT consultant out. They get viewed legal advice. They have Experian to set up that call monitoring. And really importantly, they have Mathesons that do PR. So go back to the TalkTalk incident. So actually the first incident that the CEO stood in front of the camera was a really garbled, awful message. Again, I'd encourage you to have a look at that afterwards. But it went along the lines of, yeah, we've lost some data, we don't know where it was stored, we don't really know whose data it was or how it was protected, but don't forget you can't leave us or we'll charge you £100 a person. A week later, she'd had this PR training and the response was, we've identified what's happened, we know who's been affected, we've set up this helpline for the customers, we are setting up Experian credit monitoring for everyone that's been affected here, and we're here if you need us. What a difference that was. And that's that difference in having a PR expert to do it. Also gives you the chance to actually get someone else in front of the camera. So some real claims examples. So where are we actually paying out? We had an IT director whose parting gift when he left the company was to encrypt the database that they used. Could be a relatively quick one to resolve. However, his IT team that were around him all thought they were going to be the next IT director. So they all muddled away for nearly a week before they called us, which actually it could have been resolved so quickly. But that people side again, it's the things you don't think about that actually make this a bigger loss than it is. We had a manufacturing plant that was halted for 2 days due to a SCADA virus. SCADA being the software that controls a process. 2 days doesn't sound very long, but these guys were doing food products for the superstores, the supermarkets. They're not very patient, the supermarkets, if you're not delivering those goods. Genuinely, 2 days was nearly the difference between them going out of business, because they were so reliant on those contracts. Twitter content. We had a salesman that went back to the office. Salesmen get very passionate about what they do. They didn't win a contract. So they went on the company blog and put something derogatory about the competitor. It cost us a fortune to get to an apology. Didn't actually pay a final settlement, but just to get to that stage where everyone accepted there was some remorse there. One of the earlier ones was one of the supermarket loyalty schemes, and this was actually tampered with by the internal IT teams. And what they were doing, they were moving a point off here and a point off there and giving it to family and friends. They got away with £100,000. It was caught quite quickly, but just imagine if that had rolled along and along without people noticing. Almost a generic one now. This particular company actually couldn't operate for a period of time, so having to pay overtime, because it goes back to that, how important is your network? We can all operate, we can still work, we can still pick up the phone and make calls, but is there an additional cost that's put on you? There's a lot of overtime costs in that one. Denial of service attack. So again, this was a few years back now, but the gambling websites, they're really reliant upon certain events. So if you think about the Grand National, for example. So the Grand National, big income earner. What was happening is a week before, the hackers would go in, literally for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, bring the system down to prove they could. They would then follow that up with a demand, saying, we'll bring your system down for the day of the Grand National, unless you pay us whatever the amount was. And they were actually, the gambling companies are really good at this now, but at the time, they were getting hit left, right and centre. And these phone hacking attacks, like I say, it was 3 weekends, one of them, before anyone realised. And the only time they realised was when the phone company contacted them and said, it's a big bill this month, how are you going to pay that one? So a lot of these things are actually happening around us and we're not even aware of them. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the ransomware on the hospital, I mean, a week. The healthcare industry holds this massive amount of data, but it's also reliant upon IT like you wouldn't believe. Because if you go to a modern operating theatre or any other part of those hospitals, the amount of machines that are linked into their network, just incredible. So we use Resecure, as I say. What is the advantage of using them? Well, there could be a conflict of interest with your current IT service provider. What if that service provider had done something that maybe contributed to that hacking incident? Do you want them telling you what went wrong or what didn't? Speed of response. It's so important to get something going really quickly. Don't sit on it, it won't go away. And the cost. If you don't have the insurance policy in place and you just contacted one of these consulting companies 10 o'clock on a Friday night, I can tell you it runs into many thousands of pounds to get them on site. An experience, so going back to that PR message, making sure that you're giving direct, positive news out. What the PR companies also do is tell you when not to say something. Because quite often we find there's incidents where people think they've been hacked, we've lost data, everyone goes into panic mode, well-meaning we want to tell everyone we've had an incident. Do you know what? A couple of days later we find that actual database has been moved to a different server or accidentally deleted, and there's been no hacking incident. So what's the consequence of an incident that happens? Embarrassment? Harm? Loss or denial of service? So, what's the effect on us as a business? Can we still trade? Possible damage to the integrity of the data? Litigation? Wow. Fraud, financial loss, monetary penalties. And really, this bottom bit for me sums it all up. It's that reputational harm. Are you going to lose customers off the back of this? Short but sweet.